Ever fancied seeing a horror film about a disenchanted monk who shags around and occasionally maims someone? I've got you covered. Howdy, fine people. So, on the latest stage of my Hammer Films pilgrimage, I decided to watch Rasputin from 1966, not a character I was previously familiar with, either through film or through a historical context. I get that Rasputin was actually a living, breathing person who once lived in Russia. It crossed my mind when the opening credits came on for this movie that I didn't know at all what this film was about. It was one of those occasions where you just buy something because it's Hammer and it's Christopher Lee. Now, normally that would be a winning combination, a risk worth taking, but this time around, I kind of feel like maybe I should have done some prior research into this film and it might have saved me a little bit of money on the Blu-ray. So, as hinted in the prologue, this film is about a disillusioned monk who... he can't understand why he doesn't get to enjoy the same vices as normal people. You know, he wants to sleep around, he wants to drink wine to his heart's content, he wants to acquire power and property. So one day he just decides to go out and start doing that stuff, and yet at the same time not give up his monk's license or whatever. So during this film we follow Rasputin's rise as he starts out with virtually nothing and ends up at the very top of society, mixing with Russian Tsars and living in a mansion. But he doesn't get this stuff in a clever way. He climbs the ranks by basically deceiving people and conniving and scheming and mind controlling people. He's absolutely vile, this guy. He rapes, he mind controls women to make them hurt their kids. You know, if somebody's feelings are really, really hurt, he'll just laugh at them like, ha 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 ha. He's absolutely despicably horrible, and he looks awful as well. He's like a vagrant in a robe. And this is the main character of the movie, and this is a problem for me. So I'm going to nail my colours to the mast very early on in this review and say I did not like this film. If Rasputin had been the villain in a film where we've been following somebody else try and take him down, absolutely fine. Make Rasputin the most horrible person imaginable. But because he's the main character in this and we're meant to get invested in his journey, then the whole thing was a little bit of a problem for me. Christopher Lee apparently thinks this is one of his best acting performances in all of Hammer, and this is why actors shouldn't be trusted to judge their own work, because I have to strongly disagree with you on this one, Christopher. This film is sort of a companion piece to Dracula, Prince of Darkness, at least in terms of its production. The two storylines obviously are set in very different universes, but a lot of the sets that were used in that Dracula film reappear here. I didn't know this coming into the film, but about 10 minutes in I spotted a very familiar looking bar, and then for the rest of the runtime I was constantly spotting a familiar dining room here, another familiar location there, and by the time we got to the castle with the frozen stream next to it at the end, the movie wasn't even being subtle by that point. It just needed, for me, Dracula himself to come out of the frozen water and go, "Rah!" and then somebody just shoot him dead again. I mean, it would have been breaking the fourth wall, but it would have added a little bit of entertainment for me personally in a film that I wasn't otherwise much enjoying. There is one genuinely funny moment which is in this movie, which comes near the beginning when Rasputin is on some kind of coach journey with this guy. He's puzzling out what to do next with his life. And this guy next to him starts talking about St. Petersburg in Russia, and Rasputin replies, "Oh yes, St. Petersburg, we'll go there." I'm paraphrasing. But literally 30 yards down the track, they come across this sign that says St. Petersburg this way, and it's like the most convenient thing you've ever seen in your life. I didn't even realise at this point that the film was taking place in Russia. I just presumed that it was in the usual Germany, Bavaria sort of neck of the woods. It would have been absolutely hilarious if the first act had been somewhere in mainland Europe. And then after deciding to go to St. Petersburg, Rasputin just comes across a sign that says St. Petersburg, 3,826 miles or something. Moments like this, though, just do not happen when you want to go somewhere but you don't know in which direction you have to go. You know, if I was walking through London casually one day and I suddenly decided I wanted to go to Watford, I wouldn't walk another 20 yards and suddenly there's a sign saying, "Hey, Watford, this way." It's just too good to be true. Something else that carries over from Dracula Prince of Darkness is a great deal of the acting personnel. So turning up in this film, we get Francis Matthews, Susan Farmer, Barbara Shelley, Christopher Lee, of course. It's like somebody went into the tea room on the set of Dracula Prince of Darkness and said to everybody, look, we've got this other film that's starting very, very soon and we can't be bothered having a proper casting process for it. Any of you guys fancy some overtime? You can even wear the same costumes if you feel like it. And then after that, three arms shot up and Rasputin suddenly had a cast. And then maybe Christopher Lee came in the room at that point and said, oh, count me in as well. I'm always happy to overload my schedule somewhat. In the case of Farmer, Matthews and Shelley, they're not even spread out throughout Rasputin, so maybe you wouldn't notice that this is a massive amount of Prince of Darkness alumni. In one scene, all three of them walk into this cafe together. It literally does feel like we are back at Dracula's castle. Now, in the case of Farmer and Matthews, it is literally acting overtime for them. I mean, they're not having to do half the work they had to do in that Dracula film, but I'll give credit where it's due. In the case of Barbara Shelley, she's really having to put in a performance in this film. Now, I've never been the biggest fan of hers. Whenever I've seen her in films in the past, she tends to play really uppity, snobby sort of women. Dracula, Prince of Darkness is a case in point. But here, I mean, the way that her character Sonia gets abused by Rasputin and then she's sort of mind-controlled into hurting this boy, you do feel for her, and Barbara Shelley really has to bring out the emotions. It's definitely the best acting performance in the film for me. I do have a big problem, though, with that scene where she pushes the boy off a statue and he lands on the ice. It just seems a bit perfect that she would manage to cause him just enough injury that he would be unconscious and in a coma, but still salvageable, ultimately, by Rasputin. I mean, if you push a boy off that statue, probably one of two things are going to happen. Number one, you'll overdo it and the boy will just go through the ice, or he'll bang his head and die. Or at the other end of the spectrum, you won't push him off from high enough. You know, he'll just land, bang his shoulder and be like, what did you do that for? And then he'll just walk off and he doesn't even need Rasputin's help. It's a hell of a sweet spot that you have to find right in the middle of those two extremes to just get him in the right position that he's still and not moving, but Rasputin can bring him back. So that scene for me doesn't hold up. And Rasputin's manner, his method of bringing people back is so slow and ponderous, and we have to suffer through it twice. So I'm not a fan of his healing skills in this film. I'm not a fan of his fighting skills. I mean, he's incredibly tall, obviously, Christopher Lee. He's got an incredible physical presence, this Rasputin character. You'd think he'd fight like Jack Reacher or something, but he seems to struggle with people half his size. He's there grappling with them, and there's no clear winner anytime soon. So on the whole, I didn't enjoy this film. It's not directed with any great style. I can't remember any decent sort of soundtrack in it. It's just a really weak one for me. If this is your first time watching one of my Hammer reviews, check out some of my others, because I usually praise these films, but for whatever reason, I just did not get on with this one. Time to show you the version of the film I've got. I've got this film on Blu-ray, sadly. I did buy it a couple of weeks ago. Cost me about £15-16. Yes, I do regret that decision now, but, you know, these are the breaks. I understand the game. I guess I could sell it on eBay, but I can't be bothered, you know. The amount of effort that it takes to go down the post office and wrap up a film, and then you only make half of the money back that you spent on it, unless you're actually doing eBay as like a part-time job or something. I just don't personally think it's worth it. I could keep the film. It will make my Hammer collection look more full, I guess. In an ideal world, at some point, a friend of mine will come round, look at my films, and just randomly go, you've got Rasputin. I've always wanted to see Christopher Lee's take on that old mystic healer. And I'll say, may we. Why don't you take it? I've got two of them, honestly. Unwanted birthday present, so here you are. Probably that will never happen, but I can dream. In terms of the features on this, there are some good documentaries, actually. One of them's called Tall Stories, The Making of Rasputin the Mad Monk. There's another one called Brought to Book, Hammer Novelizations, and another one is called World of Hammer Episode Costumers. So if you want to find out more about the film and you have this Blu-ray, there's plenty to get stuck into. There's also a commentary track done by Christopher Lee, Barbara Shelley, Francis Matthews and Susan Farmer, all of the Dracula alumni, basically. Now, on paper, that does sound like a good combination, but when I was done with watching Dracula, Prince of Darkness, I noticed that there was also a commentary featuring those same people, and I tried to watch it, but I had to turn it off after like half an hour. There's just too much talking over each other, and Christopher Lee's the worst, actually. I think it's problematic when you have more than, say, two people doing a commentary track. People are just finding it hard to get a word in edgeways, and that's how it was for that particular track. I imagine it's going to be no different for this one, featuring the same actors and actresses on Rasputin. But anyway, that is my Blu-ray. Let's now go to the Bag of Terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this movie. Just the one bloody axe for this out of 5. That is a really poor score. It's hard to imagine that I will ever watch this film again, but make your own mind up if you get the chance to see it. And I guess I'll be back with another Hammer review very, very soon. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.